Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. On today's episode of me talking about some of things, I'm going to be going over episode 4 of Global Showdown. Before I continue, please remember to not send hate to any of the survivalists and to support your favorites, please and thank you. And also check out the links in the description below. I highly recommend the surveys, especially the redemption survey. Now onto the episode. Day 7, Fernanda talks about wanting to stay longer and is determined to continue on in the competition. Pablo mentions how he and Fernanda are underdogs going against a legend. Pablo and Rene decide to go hunting, and we hear some of Rene's hunting past, so it looks like we're finally getting some Team Mexico and Brazil backstory, which is good because they've kind of been lost in the edit up until now, in my opinion. Rene gets a shot and manages to dispatch a Nyala, making him the 4th person to get a big game animal in the competition. Jeff talks about being in the bottom and is optimistic, while Kerra is more realistic. Frank and Teal talk about beating legends. Team USA South feast on one of their ostrich eggs, while Team Brazil feast on their Nyala after processing and cooking it. Pablo manages to hit a wild boar with an arrow, and Pablo ends up being the 5th person to dispatch big game in the competition. Team Mexico feast after processing and cooking the boar. We hear a voiceover of Fernanda mentioning they need to build another boma to protect the meat from hyenas. That night it begins to storm. Day 8, it is windy and it is elimination day. Kai mentions needing a vast range of skill sets in this competition. Rachel says she thinks Mexico will stay. Team Mexico and Texas go off to their elimination challenge. Matt mentions wishing Mexico luck and that Jeff gets the karma he might deserve. The bottom teams need to build a fire using a damp log, knife, and fire starter. The first team to make tinder, kindling, and fuel from the log to make a fire and burn a rock from their pyre will win the challenge. The team who fails will be eliminated. The teams begin. They need to get drier wood from inside the log for the most effective fire-making methods. The wind is affecting the survivalists' ability to make fire. Team Mexico gets their fire first, but the wind unfortunately blows it out. It is very tense as both teams try to get as much magnesium as they can from the ferro rod to keep the fire going. Team Texas get fire, but it also goes out. Both teams are altering their strategies to try to maintain the fire. We hear a lot of Fernanda's thoughts and commentary during this episode, so I think that may be good for Team Mexico to stay in the competition, but we shall see. Team Mexico gets fire again, and they are doing their best to maintain it and make it grow. Team Texas gets their fire and start trying to build it up. It's not over until the rock tied to the pyre falls. Team Mexico builds their fire up while Texas's fire goes out. After a hard-fought battle, Team Mexico wins the head-to-head battle and Team Texas goes home. Team Mexico celebrates their deserved win after working so hard. Jeff takes another dig at Patrick by saying some people claim to be quote-unquote legend slayers, but Team Mexico have proven to be legend slayers. Team Texas give their final interviews before heading out, and I'm just wondering if they had any leftover warthog meat, and if they did they just take it with them, or did they give it to the other teams? Who knows? USA East find out Mexico won the elimination challenge. Day 9, Kai goes hunting for necessary protein but is unsuccessful. Dan's back is still ailing him, and he mentioned on a comment in social media that he had a herniated disc and he showed a picture where he had a surgical scar on his back. Team USA Pacific is above the red line by 50 points, and while Dan is hunting, Rachel decides to go fishing. While Dan is hunting, he takes a shot and successfully dispatches a Nyala and is the 6th person to get a successful hunt this competition. He and Rachel process their meat. Rachel is mostly vegetarian, but decides to eat the meat so she can get some necessary protein, but is very hard for her emotionally to do so. That night, Dan and Rachel mention there's a lot of animal activity, and we see Team Australia and Mexico talking about the number of animals nearby. Day 10, Kai and Alexa go fishing and have unfortunately not had a large protein win in the competition so far. The teams then find a scroll. Today, the teams will build primitive bows. On day 12, they need to go to the X on the map for their next challenge. They have supplies and 48 hours to make bows. Team South isn't worried about this challenge. Kai is a little worried about making bows because she hasn't done it before. Team USA Pacific is worried, and Pablo has built bows before, but they haven't worked, unfortunately. Rene has built bows in the past, and Matt has also made bows, but not in 2 days. The teams began working on their bows. Frank has experience with primitive bow building and wants to keep it simple. Dan hasn't built a bow, but he has an olive tree and a scientific mind to try to find a way to make it work. Dan mentions Rachel doesn't like chopping and is in a lot of pain. Kai is using her learned knowledge to try and create a bow while Alexa goes fishing, and she successfully manages to get a fish. Matt is confident in his bow making as is Rene, and Rene even made bows in his previous challenges, and he wants to call the bow he's gonna make Orion, which is really cool. Pablo has an idea of how to make a bow, and Fernanda gives him a lot of options for wood to make the bow. Team South are working away and are breezing through the bow build, and they successfully make a bow, and they show off their archery skills, and they earn 50 points for completing their bow and are now at 550 points. Rachel works on the string for the bow for USA Pacific, and she talks about practicing archery beforehand and wants to prove herself and talks about the accessory work, and Dan acknowledges her contributions. Marina works on the bowstring for her team's bow, and Rene wants to heat treat the wood to make it more flexible and change its shape, and he will test it with Marina the next day. Day 11, Dan and Rachel talk about their bow, and it is not very flexible, and Rachel says he should shave it down more, but he says it may break, and Rachel is frustrated at not being able to participate as much. Dan says they'll work on the bow for her, but he won't put much effort into it, and there's some more tension growing between the two. Dan is working on another bow and is putting in a lot of effort and is in a lot of pain. Matt tests his team's bow and it's successful and they get 50 points. Gabby also made a working bow and can use it in the competition, but they earn no additional points. Renee's bow looks really cool and very professional looking, and it doesn't look like he made it in a day, so kudos to him. This is his thing, so I fear for all the other teams in this challenge. And Rene also said that he wants to beat Matt in this challenge because Matt is a skilled archer. Will he? We shall see. And also Brazil gets 50 points for their working bow. Australia, Pacific, and Mexico still need to work on their bows. Mexico tests their bows and it succeeds and they get 50 points. Dan mentions trying to make a shortcut with the string for the second bow due to time constraints. Rachel is upset that her bow can't have the type of string that she wanted because she worked really hard on the first one. She's upset and Dan tries to talk with her, but she doesn't want to talk and feels dismissed and underestimated. Kaya's still working on her team's bow and Alexa works on the string. And while Kai is trying to make it flexible, it accidentally breaks. Kai begins working on another bow and tries a simpler design. Dan works on the bowstring for the second bow. They finish the bow and they get 50 points. The tension is building and Rachel is upset, but isn't really talking about it. She says she doesn't want to shoot anymore and feels dismissed. The two bicker some more and Dan wants her head in the game. He says her attitude is selfish and he's put in a lot of effort, and Rachel doesn't feel heard and is emotional as the episode ends. I would also like to point out that this is the third episode out of 4 where it ends with Team USA Pacific, so interesting. Also, again, please don't send hate. You know, the edit is real. Stuff is being misconstrued probably. There are tensions, stuff may be happening in the background. Just please be nice. Anyway, the final scoreboard for the episode. For first place, we have USA South with 550 points. Second is USA East with 480 points. Third is Australia with 410 points. But once they finish their bow, I'm sure that will increase before the next challenge. Fourth is USA Pacific with 350 points. Fifth is Brazil with 300 points. And sixth is Mexico with 250 points. And in 7th place overall is Team Texas because they got eliminated. Number of days after day 11, Matt has 316, Dan has 210, Kai has 166, Gabby has 121, Frank has 81, Alexa and Teal have 67, Marina has 62, as does Rene, Fernanda has 53, Rachel has 46, and Pablo has 32. And Jeff's final tally for days is 294 and Kerra's is 50. Then we have episode 5, Cracking Under the Pressure. In a 2-part challenge, survivalists must choose who will use the primitive bow and who will process each animal. Strong winds wreak havoc, and the competition is rocked when an underdog team dominates. Another legend is sent to elimination. Dun dun dun. Well, the drama will continue, but I'm sure after the next elimination, everything will be hunky-dory, or another team's drama will be the highlight of the future episodes, but we shall see. Thank you all so much for listening. Please like, comment nice things, and subscribe. And again, please don't send hate to any of the survivalists. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.